She was just a waitress, a struggling soul with tired eyes, forgotten dreams, and a brain that never sat still long enough to rest. Most days she felt invisible, until today. She leaned in, steadying her hands, feeding a little boy in a wheelchair, softly, patiently, like it was the most important job in the world. But then, a voice cut through the diner like a blade. "Stop." Everyone froze, especially her. She turned slowly, and that's when she saw him. A man in a $1,000 suit, staring. Not at the boy, at her. No one knew who he was yet, but he knew everything about the boy. Because the child was his son. And that moment, that exact second, she wiped the applesauce from his chin with a napkin, was about to change everything. And I mean everything. Now, before we dive deeper into this unbelievable twist of fate, hit the comments and let me know where you're tuning in from. Pete's Diner, right off I-85, just outside Atlanta. The kind of place where time feels stuck in the 80s. Red vinyl booths, chrome napkin holders, that old jukebox in the corner that only plays what someone's grandpa used to slow dance to. Mornings start with the hiss of pancake batter hitting the grill, the clang of dishes, the buzz of caffeine-starved regulars, and the tired shuffle of people just trying to get through another day. No one really looks up. Not at the cooks, not at the busboys, and definitely not at the waitresses. But Janelle, she wasn't like the others. She moved like a melody, offbeat, but always somehow right on time, humming little tunes she made up on the spot. One hand pouring coffee, the other flipping a pad to take your order. And that laugh? Loud, unfiltered, like she forgot the world was watching, because most of the time it wasn't. She'd lose her train of thought mid-sentence, then bounce right back with a grin and a wink that made you forget what you even asked for. And yeah, some folks rolled their eyes, but others, they came back just to sit in her section. You could tell life had roughed her up some, but it hadn't dulled her spirit, not even close. She didn't fit the rhythm of the diner, but maybe that's 'cause she was making her own music all along. She didn't ask permission, didn't wait for some manager to approve it. Janelle just saw the boy struggling and moved. She knelt down beside him, one knee on the sticky tile floor, her apron catching the edge of a syrup spill, gently lifted the spoon from his trembling hand, adjusted his posture, tilted his chin just enough. Then she made the sound, vroom, like an airplane taking off. And just like that, he smiled. The kind of smile that lights up a room so fast, even the cook behind the line looked up. A few customers paused mid-bite, because joy like that, you can't ignore it, even if you're trying. Janelle had this way, a quiet kind of magic, especially with kids. She could read a room like it was Braille, feel when someone needed comfort before they even knew it themselves. She remembered every allergy, every weird coffee order, every customer who needed their burger cut in half because of dental work. But she couldn't remember where she parked her car last Tuesday. That's ADHD for you. Diagnosed at 14. But back then, nobody called it a gift. Teachers said she was scattered. Bosses said she was inconsistent. Friends, they just got tired of waiting for her to text back. But here, in this moment, with that little boy in his applesauce, she was perfect. Not polished, not precise, but present. And that's a kind of brilliance this world still doesn't know how to measure. She was mid-laugh when she felt it, that prickly sensation, like someone was watching her. And they were. Standing just a few feet away, hands tucked neatly into his tailored pockets, was a man who didn't belong there. His suit, midnight blue, custom cut, not a wrinkle in sight. His shoes, Italian leather, quiet but heavy with money. He wasn't holding a phone, wasn't looking at a menu, he was watching her. The entire diner slowed, like the air got thicker. Forks clinked a little softer. Conversations died mid-sentence. That man was Vincent Raines. Billionaire investor, tech mogul, built one of the biggest AI platforms in the country before most people knew what AI even was. He'd been featured in Forbes, spoken at MIT, rang the bell at NASDAQ. The kind of man who moved markets and never waited in line. But today, he waited, right there in a corner booth of Pete's Diner, watching his only son smile for the first time in weeks. And when Janelle looked up at him, still crouched beside the boy, she saw no smile, no warmth. Just a question. Do you always do that, for every kid? She blinked, confused, looked down at the boy, then back up at the man. Do what? She asked. Her voice was calm, casual, but something in her stomach twisted, because she didn't yet know that her life had just crossed a line between invisible and undeniable. Janelle's brain moved like a freight train, fast, loud, unstoppable. But nobody ever taught her how to steer it. In school, she was that kid, bouncing her knee under the desk, blurting answers out before the question was done. Her teachers called it disruptive. Her classmates just thought she was weird. She wasn't dumb, not even close. She just processed the world at a speed no one around her could follow. At home, things were tougher. Her mom worked double shifts at Grady Hospital, nights in the ER, days cleaning houses in East Point. Janelle barely saw her, except when she'd pass out on the couch still in her scrubs. She'd draw little cartoons on notebook paper, stick figures in capes, telling everyone she wanted to be a nurse, or maybe a magician. Either way, she said, she just wanted to fix people. By 16, she was already raising her little brother, Jamal, making dinner, handling tantrums, walking him to school while trying not to fail algebra. She got into nursing school, barely, a small program outside Macon, but 3 weeks in, she got the call. Her mom had overdosed, fentanyl-laced pills from a neighbor in South Fulton. She never made it out of the ambulance. Janelle dropped everything, moved back home, took a job, then another. No time for textbooks, no time for dreams, just bills and Jamal. ADHD didn't make her lazy. It made her tired, tired of being misunderstood, tired of trying to explain a brain that didn't fit in anyone's box. But even with the chaos, she never let Jamal go hungry, never missed a parent-teacher conference, never once told him she was drowning. She just kept showing up, shift after shift, smile after smile. The world may have forgotten her dreams, but she never stopped believing she could still matter to somebody. Vincent Rain sat alone in his Tesla. Engine off, climate control humming low. He didn't move, just stared through the glass at the woman he couldn't stop thinking about. Inside the diner, Janelle was back at it, hustling plates, smiling, nodding to the regulars like nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had, and he knew it. Deep in his gut, he felt it. This was a man who made decisions worth millions before his second espresso, who'd stared down tech giants and made boardrooms bow with a single presentation. A man who'd taught himself Python at 16 and bought out his first competitor at 27. But none of that had prepared him for this. Because he had just witnessed a woman with no formal training do something 6 pediatric specialists couldn't. She'd reached his son. Not with charts, not with jargon, not with expensive sensory tools or laminated behavior cards. With applesauce, a paper napkin, and the kind of presence that can't be taught. For months, his son had barely spoken in full sentences, would flinch when strangers got too close. Therapists came and went, smiling, clipboard in hand, clocking the hour. But today, his son laughed, a real laugh from the belly, at a spoon pretending to be an airplane. And Janelle hadn't flinched at the drool, hadn't pulled away from the twitch in his hand or the lilt in his speech. She leaned closer. Vincent's chest tightened. He looked down at his phone, pulled up the names on his recent payroll. Ivy League degrees, former Google engineers, licensed therapists with 10-page resumes. Not a single one had what she had. And suddenly, the thought hit him. Hard. How many Janelles have I passed over? How many brilliant minds have been tossed out with the applications because they didn't fit the mold? How many people have I missed because they didn't look the part? He'd spent his career building tools to filter talent, algorithms, assessments, cultural fit tests, all designed to catch the best. But what if they'd done the opposite? What if they'd filtered out the ones who think sideways, the ones who don't bullet point well on paper, the ones who feel more than they speak, the ones like Janelle? It was uncomfortable to admit, but the truth was staring him in the face. She had a brilliance his system couldn't see. He watched her smile again, this time at a little girl asking for more syrup. Janelle squatted down, eye level, listened like the child was giving a TED talk. Most servers would have waved her off. Janelle leaned in, and that was it. It wasn't a grand moment, no orchestral music, just one man, parked outside a $4.99 breakfast joint, facing the fact that maybe he'd been wrong. Not about business, not about success, but about people. He thought about his son, about all the things money hadn't been able to fix, about the gap between degrees and decency, between credentials and connection. And for the first time in years, Vincent Raines, the man Fortune magazine once called the tech prophet of Midtown, found himself sitting quietly, asking the one question no spreadsheet could answer. What if the most valuable minds aren't in the boardroom, but hiding in plain sight? It was a regular Tuesday morning. Eggs over easy, burnt toast, and the usual side of chaos. Janelle was refilling coffee at booth 4 when the diner bell chimed, and there he was again. Vincent Raines, same tailored navy suit, same polished loafers, but this time he didn't just watch. He walked straight up to her and said, "Got a minute?" No good morning, no explanation, just those 3 words. Calm, firm, intense. She blinked, confused, her apron still stained with pancake batter, order pad half full. You need a refill or something?" "No," he said. "I need your help. You gotta understand, Janelle didn't grow up trusting rich folks, not the ones who wore cufflinks worth more than a month's rent, not the ones who had assistants for their assistants. But something in his tone, it wasn't pity, it wasn't charity, it was something else. Respect, maybe? Curiosity? He handed her a business card so thick it felt like granite, embossed, minimalist. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Midtown. Just a conversation, and before she could ask a single question, he was gone. Janelle didn't sleep that night. What was this? A prank? A trap? Was she walking into some pretty woman-type setup, or worse, just being toyed with? But curiosity, man, it always pulled her in. And by 9:47 the next morning she was standing in front of a glass skyscraper on Peachtree and 14th, still wondering if her thrift store heels were loud in the marble lobby. Elevator ride up felt like a spaceship launch. 17th floor. Sleek office, cold brew machine humming, white people in wool blazers saying things like ideation and synergy. And there, waiting in a glass conference room with a skyline view, 3 men in suits flown in from Dubai, high-value investors, billion-dollar portfolios, the kind of men who don't make small talk, they make markets move. Vincent barely explained. Just looked at her and said, "I want you to sit in, just tell them what you told me. About kids, about trust, about connection." That's it. Janelle was terrified, not because she didn't know what to say, but because her mind had always moved fast. Too fast. Words tangled sometimes, emotions showed up uninvited. But she took a deep breath, sat down, and listened. The oldest man in the group made a polite comment about Atlanta's humidity, and before her brain could overthink it, she smiled and replied, in Arabic. It wasn't perfect, her accent was off, but she said it anyway. Al-Jaw fi Atlanta muftalif jiddan sah? The weather in Atlanta is quite something, huh? They froze. One of them let out a surprised laugh. "You speak Arabic?" he asked. She shook her head, grinning. "Barely, just enough to make mistakes in a charming way." And that was it. The ice? Broken. The energy? Shifted. What nobody in that room knew was that months ago, Janelle had served a family from the UAE at Pete's. She'd overheard the little girl calling her grandmother Teta, and it stuck with her. That night, Janelle went home, Googled basic Arabic phrases for beginners, watched YouTube videos, scribbled notes in the back of her planner. Just because it felt good to learn something new. She didn't know why. She just did. Now here she was, halfway up the Atlanta skyline, talking about her kid brother Jamal. How he used to stutter, but only around teachers, not around her. How she learned that connection was the key, not credentials. How people just want to feel seen. She wasn't pitching a product, she wasn't selling a dream, she was telling the truth. And the men, they listened. Not out of politeness, but because they were moved, deeply. And when one of them leaned over and whispered something to Vincent in Arabic, Vincent didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, looked at Janelle, and said, "You just sealed the deal." The investors walked out smiling, handshakes all around, but Janelle, she sat there in silence, still trying to figure out what just happened. Vincent looked at her with something new in his eyes, not strategy, not calculation, something closer to awe. No MBA, no business plan, just a waitress who listened, who cared, who saw people. That's what sealed the deal. And for the first time Janelle realized, maybe the thing that made her feel too much all her life was exactly the thing the world had been missing. Here's the thing no one tells you about climbing. It's not always the height that scares people. It's who gets to climb. See, when a billionaire walks into a boardroom, no one blinks. When a waitress from a Georgia diner shows up with ideas, folks start whispering. At Vincent Rain's Midtown office, word traveled fast. Not just about her name, but where she came from. Pete's Diner off 10th. Green uniforms. Bottomless coffee. $39.99 breakfast plates. That's the girl from the greasy spoon, someone muttered in the break room. Another smirked. What's next? Hiring Uber drivers as consultants? One woman, real sharp, always in heels, shook her head and said, "Watch, in 2 weeks she'll be gone." To them, she was a novelty, a gimmick, an inspirational LinkedIn post waiting to happen. They didn't see the fire in her. Didn't see how she took notes when no one asked her to. How she remembered names most execs forgot the second they shook hands. How she said thank you to the intern passing out agendas, like he was the CEO. But it wasn't just whispers. It was silence too. Meetings she wasn't invited to. Emails she was left off of. People who nodded at her in public and rolled their eyes in private. They questioned her presence like it was a threat. Because if someone like her could belong there, what did that mean for all the gatekeeping they'd done? She didn't know the corporate lingo. Didn't say circle back or let's ideate. She said things like, what if we just asked the customers what they actually need? And folks looked at her like she'd spoken Greek. Still, Janelle showed up, day after day. Not louder, smarter. She brought handwritten notes to meetings when others brought laptops. She stayed late, not to impress, but to understand. She sketched flowcharts on napkins and pinned them to her cubicle wall. One day, she noticed the janitor, Mr. Lewis, fumbling with a busted mop cart. She didn't call facilities. She fixed it herself. My mama raised me to help, she said, not just watch. Word got around, not because she told anyone, but because people talk, especially when kindness looks out of place in a skyscraper. But even as some tried to box her in, others started leaning in, asking her thoughts, noticing the way employees lit up when she spoke, realizing that her ideas weren't just different, they worked. She suggested one simple change to the onboarding process: make the first day about connection, not just policy. The result? Retention went up, fast. Still, not everyone clapped. One VP scoffed, "She's not scalable." Janelle just smiled and said, "Neither is trust. But y'all still trying to build it." She wasn't trying to climb ladders. She was trying to fix them. So people like her, people with ADHD, single moms, overlooked minds, could have rungs to stand on. Because she knew the truth most execs forget. Intelligence doesn't always wear a suit, and brilliance doesn't ask for permission. She never asked to be a symbol. She just didn't want the next little black girl with a wandering mind and a big heart to think she didn't belong in those glass towers. So while they whispered behind closed doors, she built bridges in plain sight. Not to prove them wrong, just to show others what right could look like. 6 months, that's all it took. 6 months from diner shifts and lukewarm coffee to corner office keycards and keynote invitations. But Janelle? She didn't change for the boardroom. She changed the boardroom to fit people like her. Vincent Rains, billionaire, investor, visionary, didn't just hand her a title, he handed her a mission. He launched Spark, not another soulless diversity initiative, but a full-on paradigm shift. The idea? Stop chasing polished resumes. Start investing in untapped minds. Under Janelle's leadership, Spark wasn't about inclusion optics. It was about rebuilding the entire system, from the lobby to the C-suite. She didn't hire for who sounded smartest in interviews. She hired for who listened hardest in real life. People with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, folks who'd been dismissed, overlooked, labeled as difficult or too much. She saw past the labels. She saw potential, the kind buried under trauma, under school reports marked underachieving. Her first hire? A 19-year-old nonverbal coder from Decatur who built an entire back-end system in 3 days. Her second? A mom with dyscalculia who redesigned Spark's budgeting system using visuals and color patterns. No Ivy League degrees, no buzzwords, just brilliance in motion. By month 7, Spark wasn't just a hiring program, it was a movement. Companies across Atlanta and soon after DC and Chicago were calling, asking, how do we build what she built? Her answer? Stop pretending talent looks one way. Start listening for what the world's been whispering. Meanwhile, back at Pete's Diner off I-85, they named a booth after her. Right under the neon "Open 24/7" sign, it reads, "The Janelle Booth, for the ones who saw what others missed." Every Saturday, you'll still catch her there. Not in heels, not with a laptop, just Janelle, in jeans and a hoodie, flipping through a sketchbook. Still drawing stick figures with capes like she did when she was a kid. Only now, they look a lot like her. That little boy she spoon-fed that day? His name's Carter, nonverbal, wheelchair user, bright as the Georgia sun. He calls her Auntie J now. And get this, his therapists, they stopped trying to fix him and started learning from him. His classroom got restructured after a visit from Janelle. Not special ed, just special attention, because every kid deserves someone who gets it. Janelle didn't set out to be a pioneer. She just wanted to matter. And in doing so, she changed the map for 1,000 others. She once said, "I don't need a statue, just give people like me a seat and make sure it's not the one by the door." Well now, she's building the whole damn table. So when folks talk about culture shifts, don't look at hashtags, don't quote think pieces. Look for the waitresses, the ones who move like music's in their bones, the ones who remember your allergies but forget their teas, the ones you almost ignored. Because the next revolution in your company might be pouring coffee at the corner diner right now. Janelle wasn't broken, she never was. But the world, it sure tried to convince her otherwise, tried to box her in with labels, called her too loud, too scattered, too much. But Janelle didn't shrink, she stretched. Stretched until the walls cracked, until the ceilings raised, until the boardrooms echoed with voices like hers, and voices the world forgot. Now, she leads town halls in heels she thrifted, signs off emails with doodles, and teaches C-suite execs how to actually listen. You'll catch her hugging kids who feel different, visiting schools that used to kick her kind out, and every now and then you'll see her sitting on that same front porch in South Fulton, laughing with her little brother, both of them finally able to breathe. She didn't make it because she changed herself. She made it because she dared to stay exactly who she was. ADHD, heart first, soft-spoken brilliance and all. She didn't ask for a seat at the table. She built a longer one, with room for every messy, magical, misunderstood genius the world had pushed to the side. So here's the question. Next time you see someone fumbling with change at the register, spacing out in class, losing focus in meetings, someone the world writes off, shrugs off, walks past, ask yourself, what if they're not lost? What if they're a genius in disguise? Because brilliance doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears sneakers and an apron. Sometimes it talks too fast, thinks in loops, forgets what day it is, but remembers you when no one else does. Janelle didn't just change her life. She changed the lens, and once you change the lens, you can't unsee the brilliance you've been walking past for years. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you of your cousin, your student, your daughter, or maybe even yourself, then go ahead. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the next story that just might shift your world too.